All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Transfer Portal Gambling Podcast, the Transfer Portal CFB Gambling Podcast, brought to you by No Context CFB. This episode is sponsored by our friends at Homefield Apparel. Homefield is a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis, and they're committed to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They've got a growing collection of over 150 schools to choose from, including all of your favorite schools, with new collections and new schools coming every single week. If you're new to the Homefield Apparel brand, if you're a first-time customer, use our promo code PORTAL, P-O-R-T-A-L, to get 15% off your order. That's promo code PORTAL, P-O-R-T-A-L, to get 15% off your first order. So that link is in the description of this video, in our bio. Also in our bio is how to follow us. Like and subscribe to this channel, to this video, and you can find us at thetransferportalcfb.com and on Twitter or X at tportalcfb. So we're back here for our Week 11 gambling preview and podcast, and I'm joined, like I am every week, with Matt and Mike. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
What's up, guys?
So we're going to go through all of the slate, break down all the top games, and give you our picks, our 5 picks that we track every single week, over, under, favorite underdog, and lock of the week. And then we'll get some money-making picks. Both Matt and Mike made some money last week with true upsets and teasers and parlays. But before we get into that, let's do a little bit of cleanup. Let's get some of the news and playoff talk out of the way. We had our second rankings for all the teams this past Tuesday. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Who, outside of the rankings that we just saw, who are your top 4 teams that you see in the playoff? And then give me potential chaotic scenario or something that you would like to see happen or can potentially see happening. So I'll start, Matt. Yeah, go ahead.
My top 4 are Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State, Washington. I don't think Michigan should be there. My ideal scenario is Michigan drops out. They lose this week. They lose to Ohio State. They're just out of there. And then if they drop out, I want one of Texas or Bama to move in somehow, because I think that'd create the most fun games. But I think it's going to be Ohio State, Georgia, Florida State, Washington. I don't think Florida State loses the rest of the year. Neither does Georgia. And the only way Ohio State loses is to Michigan.
Yeah, I like that. I can see that. It's just kind of like a merry-go-round of like the same teams that we're seeing at the top. But Mike, what do you see for your top teams? And then, what do you see potentially as a chaos scenario?
My top teams are Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and lost at Washington. So I don't think Florida State's a contender. I think they're a pretender. My pick of chaos would be Georgia getting upset in the SEC game. I'd be very curious to see what they would do. How I don't understand. I don't see how you leave them out. If there's multiple 1-loss teams, but that would be the chaos of the year for the College Football Playoff Committee to have to decide that.
I would love to see them try to make an argument if Alabama beats them and it's a close game to put both of them in. That would drive so many people up a wall. But I see Michigan. I see I see Michigan, Georgia, Texas, and Oregon. And I like Oregon to upset Washington in the Pac-12 title game and kind of steal that spot. And then, like you said, Mike, I kind of think Florida State, I think they're kind of just hanging on by a thread, and something potentially could go wrong. They got Florida at the end of the year. They got the ACC championship game. I think there's a lot of, there's a rocky road potentially ahead for Florida State. So I see some chaos there. I just think Michigan is kind of theirs to lose, and I can kind of see them knocking off Ohio State at the end of the year. So we'll see. I can see that one going either way, and then I can see Washington, Oregon going either way. But I see Texas kind of sneaking in there for that last spot. But let's move over to clean up from last week. Some potential bad beats, good wins, what have you. I'll move over to Mike. You first. Give me a bad beat of the week. I feel like I know what you're going to say.
It's not really a bad beat. I'm just salty about it. So Texas was up 20 late in the third quarter and somehow did not cover -4. I I thought that at that moment in time, I was already like counting the money. And that one, yeah, that one didn't fall through.
That was the lock of the week too.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt? What you got?
I had Texas -4, but I had that too. But I had a good beat in the Service Academy game where they scored 26 in the first half, and I'm like, oh, okay, so 32's in trouble here, and then they didn't score the second half. Not a single point, just punts back and forth. I'm like, okay, that's the game I was expecting.
That's the game. Yeah, that's the game everyone was expecting. I should have made that my lock. I was so confident in Army plus 18.5. And as soon as they came out, I think they had like a interception return for a touchdown or something, and it was a little chaotic. And then, like you said, just no points, and it was just a rock fight the second half. But yeah, no, I didn't really have a bad beat or a good win. I mean, my salty game is just Notre Dame. I was super upset with Notre Dame just, shooting themselves in the foot, not really doing what they're supposed to do. Sam Hartman didn't look good. And then not a bad beat, but just, I mean, Rice hung in there with SMU. I've been riding the SMU train a little bit, and JT Daniels, looked pretty good, and there Rice was able to score a little bit and keep that game close, but not necessarily any bad beats or pull out wins for me in the past week. But let's turn our focus a little bit to this week to ranked games of the week. We got a couple ranked games on the slate. This isn't necessarily the biggest week for ranked games. Last week was kind of the heavy hitter, and this week we're kind of gearing up for rivalry week next week and in the next 2-3 weeks. But we got 4 games on the slate. I'll start, Matt, with you with the first one. Utah, number 18, visiting number 5 Washington at Washington. And Washington's favored by 9.5, and the over/under is 51.5. What do we like for Utah and Washington?
I think we're gonna kind of get a repeat of the Oregon Washington game or the Oregon Utah game here, where Oregon just kind of blew them out the water. I think Washington's gonna beat up Utah pretty good here, so I like the 9.5. Utah just they don't have the scoring to hang with a Washington or Oregon. They can score, they can put up points, but they can't hang with like the true high octane offenses. And their defense isn't quite as good as it was the last couple of years, where they can hold them a bit and kind of stay in those games. So I think Washington's going to spread them out a bit here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close to the beginning. Their defense is just, I think they're just going to be on the field for too long, and they're just going to get a little tired, and Washington's going to pull away. They have too good of a receiving core to not be able to pull this off. And I kind of like them with -9.5. But Mike, I'll move over to you for the second game. If you have thoughts on the first game, let us know. But number 13, Tennessee, visiting number 12, Missouri. Tennessee's -1, and then the over-under is 58.5.
Yeah, the only thought I have on the Utah Washington game is this is probably Michael Penix's last time that he can really damage his Heisman hopes, because Utah's defense, while they're definitely not what they have been, they're one of the better ones in the Pac-12, and I could see him putting up a couple picks. But if he doesn't, I think it's his to lose for the rest of the year. But for Tennessee at Missouri, I think this is a true pick'em game. I'm not really sure what to expect from a dominant standpoint. I think it's going to be similar to the LSU Missouri game that we had before. I think the offenses are going to throw up some big plays. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch with a lot of lead changes. If anybody has a feeling on either side of the ball, I would strongly encourage you to throw money line on this. I wouldn't be taking spreads and like teasers on this one. I would just go straight money lines.
Yeah, I love both offenses in this game. I mean, we talked about it before we started recording, but Tennessee, they lost the time of possession battle by like 10 minutes last week against UConn, and they beat them like 55-0. There was just massive plays all over the field. But I do like Missouri's offense. I know last week it was a little bit of a buzzsaw running into Georgia when Georgia's got a lot of stuff clicking down the stretch. But I mean, Brady Cook looks super good, for the rest of the season. He's been figuring out 2 interceptions against Georgia, but I think he bounces back. I have him as like one of my players to spotlight for this week. I actually have Missouri pulling this off at home. So I think they're able to handle scoring with Tennessee. And I think Tennessee, this isn't really a cakewalk defense. Missouri's going to be able to actually, hold them maybe once or twice and be able to outscore them a little bit. Yeah. So I do kind of like the over too.
To your point, Missouri was really in that game until they threw that
pick at the end.
to the defensive tackle. And then it kind the score kind of got away from them, but
Yeah.
they were really in it until the end.
Yeah, and I think Georgia's defense is way more frightening than Tennessee's. So
Absolutely.
but yeah, no, I do like Missouri there. It is a true pickup game. I mean, -1's not really much of a spread, but I think it basically opened at 1.5 or one and just kind of sat there because no one really knows what to do with this game. But I'll move over to you, Matt, for this next one. Number 9, Ole Miss visiting Georgia, who we just talked about, who's number 2 in the country. Georgia is -10.5, and the over/under is 57.5. What do you got for the Rebels visiting Georgia?
I think this is kind of Georgia's game. I think the only way you can beat Georgia is if you can stop their offense. Their defense is going to be good no matter what you do. It's going to be a struggle to put up points. But if you have a bad offense or defense that's just going to let them score, you can't really beat them at Ole Miss. We saw in that game against LSU where they put up 100 and something combined points. They don't have the defense to stop really anybody, and I think Georgia's going to do what they do. They're going to have 28 points and just hold them down a little bit and not going to be able to win. So I think the spread's pretty close. I don't love the number at 10.5 because Ole Miss's offense is good. They are going to be able to put up points. So I'm not, it's going to be pretty close to that spread, but I think Georgia still wins comfortably.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I like the spread around 10.5 is starting to get a little bit scary, but I mean, like Ole Miss just, almost dropping one to Texas A&M last week. I just don't really see them being able to hang with Georgia. And Carson Beck, kind of as scary as it sounds, like he's now becoming, one of the better quarterbacks in college football. Like the past couple of weeks, he's climbed up the charts in terms of like QBR and everything like that. And he's actually kind of figuring it out. So them having someone who's confident behind center again is making Georgia a much scarier football team than they were at the beginning of the year when they were kind of squeaking by wins a little bit. But I think Georgia wins this game fairly comfortably too. I like that. And then game of the week, big noon kickoff. Moving over to you, Mike, because this is close to home. But number 3, Michigan coming to Happy Valley. Number 10, Penn State. Michigan's favored by 4.5. Over under is 45. I'll give you the floor. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I truly don't know what to expect for it because like Michigan hasn't played anybody yet, so they've trounced a bunch of people. They've had it close in the first halves in a couple games, and like they didn't play Rutgers well, but Ohio State just didn't play Rutgers well. Yeah, Penn State, like very similar to Carson Beck, Drew Aller is starting to figure it out. So, the last 6 quarters of ball for him have been very, very good. So this really could go any way. I could see Michigan winning by a touchdown or 2 scores, and then I also could see Penn State winning this game. I think this is going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be a little bit of a defensive struggle to start, but I think you're going to see some big plays be the difference in this, whether it's a turnover big play or long passes or long runs. But there's a lot of talented running backs in this game as well.
Yeah, and would you say that Jim Franklin said before this game? He said it's either going to be a shootout or a classic Big Ten game.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're going to see both of them. I think it's going to be very similar to like the Penn State Ohio State games of the last few years. You're going to see in the first half be a defensive struggle, a rock fight, like you said. And I think you're going to see a couple big scores in the second half. That's going to make people get a little sweat that over under a little bit at 45.
I truthfully, I like the under. We'll talk about this game a little bit later in terms of my picks, but I think this game's going to be a rock fight. I think Michigan has looked good. They've taken care of business everywhere they've went, but I think Penn State's defense is legit, and JJ McCarthy hasn't seen corners like Kalen King and who Penn State has. So I'm not really, entirely sure, about how this game's going to look, but I think it's going to be a lot closer in terms of, the over under being under 45 and this being kind of a little bit of a slugfest going into the fourth quarter. So we'll see, but I do think a late score kind of probably will decide this one. But Matt, do you got any thoughts about that before we move on to our overview of last week?
I think Penn State wins this. I still think Michigan just hasn't played anybody. They're a good team. I just don't think they're a playoff team. I think Penn State wins. I think this is the death of the JJ McCarthy Heisman candidacy, which I couldn't be happier for. Think he has a bad game here. And the main reason I think they win is Penn State's run D is beefed up. That run D is good, and Michigan's, if McCarthy can't throw, they're going to rely on Corum, and I don't think they'll be able to run as well as they have on Penn State in the last few years.
Yeah, and they haven't looked amazing running the ball either, Michigan. So yeah, like I said, I just think this is a little bit of a slugfest. But yeah, no, it's gonna be a little bit of a tough one. But we'll get into that a little bit later because I think we all have some takes on this that we're gonna give with some of our picks. But before we do our picks, let's do a little bit of a cleanup from last week. I have some sins to answer for. I lost my lock. I'm back on my I'm back back on my BS with my locks going 2-7-1 now, but I was 1-4 last week, and last week I could not have loved the board anymore. So I don't know. Maybe this is a better week for me because the board was a little bit more frightening for me this week. But yeah, 1-4, not really good. Matt and Mike both going 2-3, or both going 3-2, excuse me. But Matt winning his lock, Mike losing your lock, which was Texas that we mentioned before. But yeah, that kind of updates our standings a little bit. They still stayed the same order, but Mike still positive, 27-23, 6-4 in your locks. Matt 25-24-1 with a 9-1 record on your locks, and then me 20-29-1 with a 2-7-1 record on my locks. So time to turn it around. If I go 5-0 the next 2 weeks, then I'm positive. So that's going to be my little bit of a spin zone. And then I can't go positive on locks, but that's okay. We'll get some money making picks at the end of the show here. But all right, so let's move on to our official picks of the week. So like I said, doing our same 5 picks, over under, favorite, underdog, lock of the week. And then we'll send you on your way with some of our money making picks, our true upsets, and our parlay and teaser. But let's start with our over. So give us the spread, and then what the over that you love. Let's start with Matt for your favorite over of the week.
I'm back on another pick that I've liked the last few weeks is Rice overs. They've been hitting pretty well for me. I think I won on them 2 weeks ago. I'm checking right now. What are they on the over on the season? They're 6-3 on the season in their overs. So they're doing pretty well. So for Rice and UTSA, the over under is 58.5. And this is just kind of the games Rice has been playing lately. 36-31 against SMU, 30-28 against Tulane, 42-10 against Tulsa. They're an offense that can put up points, and their defense isn't great. And then UTSA is kind of the same thing. 37-29 against North Texas, 41-27 against ECU, 41-20 against UAB. Both of them kind of play a similar style where they pass a bunch. UTSA's back kind of to where they were last year. Frank Harris had a rough start to the year, but he's figured it out the last few weeks. I think they've won either their last 5 of their last 6 or all 6 of their last 6. They're on a good streak. So I like this game to be really high scoring. I think it pushes into the 60s pretty easily. So 58.5 is the number I like there.
Yeah, I like that too. And Rice, like I said, they were able to keep pace with SMU scoring, and that's a really good sign. So JT Daniels is able to put up some points. I do like that 58.5. I like that number under 60. My over under of the week, I have New Mexico State at Western Kentucky. The over under is 56.5, so I like over 56.5. This is a little bit of an odd pick because coming off of last week, both of their totals were significantly under, but I think that was a little bit of a misstep for both of them, and they're both going to find their groove again this week. I think Western Kentucky, Austin Reed's got to be able to start throwing the ball again. I think he, started the season a little bit cold, got a little bit hot, then, went a little bit cold last week. And then Diego Pavia at New Mexico State can run the ball and throw the ball. I think he can put up some points. I think this is going to turn to a shootout, relatively quickly off the jump. And I think, covering 56.5, I think, I don't think either of these pass defenses are within the top 110 in the country. I think they're both like, 100 and 115 or something like, or 110, 115. So I think they're both going to be able to throw the ball a little bit. And once one team starts to put up points, I think it's going to be a little bit of a shootout. So New Mexico State at Western Kentucky over 56.5 is my pick for the over. Mike, what do you got for your favorite over of the week?
I got the game we talked about a little earlier, Tennessee at Mizzou, over 58.5. They might break this in one half if it goes similar to the way that the Mizzou LSU game went. A lot of big plays on both sides. The defenses are not nearly as good as the offenses, so I feel really, really good about this pick.
Yeah, we already talked about this a little bit. I love this pick. I'm a little upset you took it because I was about to take this if you didn't. So, but definitely like this. I just think both teams kind of have massive offenses, and I mean we'll see. Joe Milton looked pretty good, and they even brought in Nico for for a couple throws, and he got a touchdown in like 97 yards. So, right, I don't think he's going to see any time this week, but I think they're definitely going to be able to hit 60. Let's move to our unders of the week. So our favorite under. I'll start with mine. I'm going to take Stanford at Oregon State under 54.5. I think this is mostly just an Oregon State bully game. I don't really think Stanford is that good of a football team. I think them putting up some points against like last week, I mean, they scored 10 points last week against Washington State, but them putting up some points against Washington, I think was a little bit of it was a little bit of a fluke, and I don't think Washington's defense is that good. And I think Oregon State is just able to run the ball a lot more effectively, and they're just going to be able to, lean on them and pressure them way too much for them to be able to handle. So I see them being held 10 or less points for the entire game. And I see Oregon State just scoring like 21 and calling it a day. So I think this goes well under, but Stanford at Oregon State under 54.5. Matt, what do you got for your over under for the week? Or sorry, your under for the week.
I went with one of the many nasty Big Ten games that are going to be out there this week. Wisconsin Northwestern under 42.5. And I just can't be led to believe by Vegas that the Wisconsin offense is good enough that the total should be this much different from the Iowa game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Iowa's offense is bad. Yes, I agree. But I don't think Northwestern is going to score on Wisconsin more than 7 or 10 points. And I don't think Wisconsin's going to put up 30. So I don't think this game gets into the 40s. Like, Wisconsin couldn't put up points against Indiana. They put up 14 against Indiana. They put up 6 against Iowa. They're not a good offense. The dairy raid did not work out. It's spoiled. It's not an offense that can move the ball efficiently. I like Wisconsin coming into the year. I'm out on that. I don't think they're an offense that can sustain. I still think that the coaching hire was good. I think he'll work out eventually. I just don't think he has the personnel with Mordecai back there. So I think this goes well under 42.5. I think Northwestern puts up single digits, and I don't think Wisconsin puts up that much.
Yeah, I forgot that they named it the Dairy Raid. I do love that, but no, I loved Mordecai going over there, but yeah, their offense has been pretty abysmal. So I do love this pick. 42.5 is kind of a low number, but like you said, I don't think Northwestern's putting up more than 10. So it's just basically all in Wisconsin, and I don't really think they're going to bother. I think it's going to be cold up there in Madison. They're just going to score 20 points and just call it a day and then just win the game. Mike, what do you got for your under the week?
I went down to ACC country, Miami at FSU, under 51. Miami's defense isn't a bad defense. They've given up some points to some teams, but they got athletes all over the place, and they've played well against opponents that they've gotten up for. This is still a rivalry game. They're going to get up for this game. I don't think FSU is going to score a ton of points. They only put up 24 on Pittsburgh last week. And I know that Miami's offense isn't going to score a lot against FSU's defense. So, I'm not predicting an upset or anything like that for Miami, but I am predicting a lower scoring game. I see this somewhere in the 24-13 range from a end game standpoint. These rivalry games, they're normally juiced up for them. They're going to be playing for recruiting battles and stuff like that. I'm not a believer in FSU to put up 40 points against a decent defense, so I feel really good about under 51.
Yeah, I think
love it.
Yeah, I love the pick too. I think this is the FSU a little bit of a fraud pick. I think that they're not able to put up too many points against Miami. All right, let's move on to our favorites. So our favorite team giving points this week. Mike, I'll just jump right back to you. Who's your favorite team giving points this week?
Yeah, this was close to being my lock, like really close to being my lock. I was very surprised at this line. So Kansas minus 3.5 against Texas Tech. Texas Tech is not a bad football team by any stretch of the imagination, but they are not the same football team away as they are home. And Kansas is a much better football team at home than they are away. I think this is a two-score game. I know Kansas is probably riding high still, but Texas Tech they have some really bad losses on the road. One of which to Wyoming. Going to Kansas is a different place than going to Wyoming. And Kansas is playing pretty well right now, so I feel really really good about this pick.
To be honest, I have another pick kind of anti this a little bit later on. So I'm not a huge fan of this pick. I think Texas Tech is going to show out a little bit, and I'll give some of my reasons in a little bit. But Matt, what do you think about that? And then what do you got for your favorite giving points?
I think it's going to be close to that. I think it's a one-score game, but I don't know which way it goes. So I do think there's a decent chance it works out if Kansas plays the way they did like 2 weeks ago. Then obviously that there's no question. But Texas Tech has shown some fight after they were lost a little bit in the middle of the season. I have Washington minus 9.5 at Utah. I talked about it a little earlier when we talked about the ranked games. I think this is kind of a repeat of the Oregon-Utah game where they just kind of put up points and showed that Utah couldn't do that. Now, Oregon's defense is better than Washington's defense, so Utah won't put up 6 like they did against Oregon. I think they're going to put up probably a couple touchdowns, but I think Washington puts up probably in the 30s or 40s. Now, the one thing, the reason I think the spread is so low, because I was a little surprised at this number, is Washington hasn't covered this number in the last 5 weeks, except last week against USC, which was a closer game than the final score was. But they had covered everything in all the first 4 weeks, and then George put him at his lock, and
I was going to say.
then the streak got ruined. So hopefully they get back on that track. That they had 4 weeks of not doing it, 4 weeks of not. So now the curse is over. They're gonna cover for the last 4 games of the season.
I mean, if anyone could break the curse, it's you picking him as a favorite, because I mean you were like the magic touch with Iowa being able to get picked and cover for you. But I was gonna say I really hope you made that correlation, because yeah, me picking them as a lock, and I literally said on the podcast, I was like, they've covered every single game this year, and then they have not covered since, basically. So gotta love it. Gotta love my lock curse. But all right, so I'll give my favorite. Mike, you're not gonna like this one, but I got Michigan minus 4.5 at Penn State. I know Michigan hasn't played anyone. I think their strength of schedule is like 111th in the country, like something like abysmally bad. But I do give credit where credit's due when it comes to taking care of business. I think, people point to Rutgers and say that was like, their worst game that they played this season. They still took care of business. They still handled Rutgers. It was just a little bit ugly, and a lot of teams have had vulnerability and ugly games, but I do think this game is a little bit of a rock fight and a slow start, slow moving game. But I think Penn State's strength is definitely running the football, and they've gone away from it the past couple of weeks. And I think if Michigan scores early, which I think likely will happen, Penn State's not going to be able to lean on the run game the way they would want to. And I think Drew Allard looked very, very shaky against a good Ohio State defense. I think Michigan's defense is pretty good, maybe not at that exact level, but I think relying on Drew Allard, I don't really see them being able to put up a whole lot of points, and I could see Michigan, going up by 7 or 10, and then just kind of holding pace. And I see this game being a little ugly and being like a 24-13 game in Michigan's favor. So I got them for my favorite minus 4.5. Sorry, Mike, had to do it. Had to go against you there, man. But
Yeah, I could see it happening, but I don't think it's going to happen. If you're going to use your argument, if you're like the college football playoff right now, if you're going to use your argument about Michigan handling business, Penn State's handled business against everybody, not named Ohio State, and had one shaky game against Indiana, but still won by 10 or whatever it was, 11.
I agree, but the past is the past, and they haven't been able to handle against Ohio State and Michigan in a couple years. So.
Michigan, they got a 500 record against under James Franklin.
Okay,
Michigan,
all right.
Yeah, Michigan's not Ohio State.
That's fair. It is at Penn State too, so Happy Valley does, I think, make a little difference. But But I don't know. I feel pretty good about Michigan being able to. I don't really think Drew Lar shows out or not Drew Lar. I don't think JJ McCarthy shows out this game. I do. I don't think has a terrible game, but I do kind of hope that this is the end of the JJ McCarthy Heisman, run, because that would be an awfully boring Heisman, and I kind of want to see a little bit more there.
I just
But
wish you made it your lock. That was my wish was that you made it your lock.
see, if I made it my lock, it's a guarantee Penn State money line, but I would have made you guys a whole bunch of money. But yeah. Wait, the only thing, yeah, has Michigan covered like almost every game this year? Because then that would be me being able to jinx them with covering this. But
I could check.
It's close.
Yeah, it's close. I know they definitely have covered the majority. I think like 6 or 7 of their games this year. Rutgers probably being like the only one that they like truly haven't covered.
I think Penn State's only not covered 2.
Yeah, one being Ohio State, and then
Indiana.
Indiana. Yeah. But Matt, let me know if you find that.
They're 7-2. Or no, Michigan is 4-4-1. Penn State 7-2.
Okay. So maybe, yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I have an actual favorite curse or if it's just the luck curse. But all right, so let's move on to our underdog. So who we got getting points this week? I will start with mine. I have Tulsa plus 22.5 against Tulane. Tulsa hasn't looked super good, so obviously that's why they're dogs 22.5 against Tulane. I think Tulane's ranked like 23 in the country now with the latest college football playoff, and that's mostly because they've been on a little bit of a heater. They've won like 6 of their last 7 or something like that. But a lot of the games that Tulane's been winning have been 1-score games or really close games. So Tulane doesn't really blow teams out. Every team that they've beaten, I think the last 3 weeks have been combined like 10 or 12 points. So I don't really see them. I see them definitely winning this game. So I don't want to call this an upset, but I don't see this being a blowout, and I don't see them being over, a 3-touchdown favorite against literally anyone. So I think Tulsa's able to put up, 10 points or so against Tulane, and Tulane's going to put up, about 30, and that'll be, where it's at. I think this is a 14 point to 20 point at the most spread here. So I got Tulsa plus 22.5 at Tulane. Matt, I'll go over to you for your underdog for the week.
Yeah, I like that too. I thought I was gonna like Tulane in that game, and then I saw the spread was 3 scores. I'm like, that just doesn't seem right. They haven't done that this year. Yeah. I just had to double check mine to make sure mine was still an underdog, because on ESPN it says they're a favorite, but on Bovada, my site, it says Iowa's an underdog. So I'm counting that as my underdog pick because I already have it picked. Iowa +1 against Rutgers. I mean, Iowa's bad. Yes, they're not a good offense, but they don't lose games. They're 7-2, and they probably should have won the game against Minnesota if they don't call that a fair catch after they play for some odd reason. So this should be an 8-1 team. Like you don't have to like it. You don't have to watch the game. You don't have to enjoy it. But Iowa football wins games out there, and Rutgers is not a good team. They have a few wins against Indiana, Michigan State, Wagner. Like they have wins. They're 6-3, but they're just not a team that I think can hang with Iowa. I don't think they will score very many points, if any at all. So I think Iowa wins. So I have it +1. So obviously just them winning it all would cover this, but I think they win this game. I don't think they should be underdogs or even a pick 'em at all.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a cheap pick with the +1, but we'll give it to you. But no, I can't believe that they're. I don't think the spread should be a lot, but I think they should be favored by 2 points or so here. I think they're giving way too much I think they're giving Rutgers way too much credit for just ugly gameplay by Ohio State, like first half of last week. I mean, Ohio State ended up covering. They blew them out in the second half and won by 19. But I just think, Rutgers just wants to make this game ugly, and that's, Iowa was born in the ugliness. Like you can't show up to Iowa and say that you want to try and make a game ugly and pull out a win. So I do like Iowa's defense here, and I don't think there's really any scoring, but I think Iowa just this is going to be the first to like 9 wins this game. Basically, the over under 28.5. It's like a true sickos game.
You can't
But
out
Mike,
ugly Brian Ferentz.
I think Brian Ferentz, someone was doing the math on it. Is I know he's not coming back next year, but if we're still keeping part of the tracker, I think they've got to score like 39.8 points per game for the rest of the year
Sure.
for him to hit that number.
Why
Which
not?
yeah, it was literally like 1.5 times what the over under for this game is almost. But all right, so yeah, Iowa +1. Okay, we'll give that to you for an underdog. I love that pick because I think Iowa's just wins ugly. That's their entire DNA. But Mike, what do you think about our picks? Then who do you got for your underdog?
I like both your picks, to be honest, and I have a similar mindset on mine than that you do on yours, George. But I want to go back. I don't think Ohio State ran away with it and against Rutgers in the second half. I think Rutgers gave them the pick six when they were about to score a touchdown.
They're about to be down 2 scores. That
Yeah,
could
yeah,
Mhm.
that was gonna be
It
gonna be
was
dicey, and that play could have been called targeting. They were talking about it
that's
on
true. That's true.
so if that got called targeting, that's a different game. But anyway, I'm going back to the UConn well for the similar reason that you went to the Tulsa well with Tulane. Outside of last week, JMU plays close games. I know Matt said that a couple times when picking spreads over the season, and they've worked every single time he's done it. UConn also plays close games outside of last week against Tennessee, so I feel really, really good about this +25.5. I don't like that it's at JMU, but given the trend of both teams playing close games, I feel good about it.
Yeah, I love this. I think last week was a little bit of a not a fluke, but UConn normally doesn't get blown out, and Tennessee normally doesn't, do that and then just score like 55 points with losing the time of possession battle. Like UConn won the time of possession battle by like 10 minutes across the game. So
17 minutes.
17 minutes. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's nuts. But yes, I think I like that. Actually, I love all three of our picks. So I think if we're gonna, play any of these together, I think the underdogs are definitely pretty good here. But all right, so those are the four, and then our lock of the week. So I'll go over to you, Matt. Who is your lock of the week? You're leading us 9-1 for the season so far. So who do you got?
I have a Georgia Tech +14 at Clemson. Being in Death Valley scares me, obviously, and I wish I had that half point, but I don't know what Clemson's done to deserve to be 14-point favorites over Georgia Tech. Like, yes, they beat Notre Dame last week. That's a good win, but they lost to last 2 weeks before. They lost to NC State, lost to Miami, won by 5 over Wake Forest. Like, this is not a team that has won like blowout games outside of, I think against Syracuse they covered that, and against Charleston Southern and FAU they covered that. But outside of that, all of their games have been 1-score games where they've lost. I don't think. And Georgia Tech on the flip side has beaten North Carolina the week before, who I think is a better team than Clemson. They beat Miami, who Clemson lost to. I think this is a Georgia Tech team that they have a little bit of an identity. Haynes King's been slinging the rock this year, which is not a sentence I thought I would be saying, but he has been. He's been throwing that thing. He has 22 touchdowns. I think they can hang with Clemson. I don't think they'll beat them. I think Clemson's defense is too good to allow that to happen, but I think they'll hang within 2 scores.
I love this pick. I can't believe Haynes King is that somehow rooting for him a little bit, but I think that's just me rooting against Dabo as strongly as I'm rooting against Dabo Sweeney. But I love this pick. I also think Clemson coming off like a super a pretty emotional win, and all of that going into last week, all like the storylines about Dabo, and then them being underdogs at home against Notre Dame. Of course, I made Notre Dame my lock, so that was basically a guarantee that Clemson was going to pull it off. But no, I don't think Georgia Tech is a 2-touchdown dog against Clemson. So love this pick. Mike, what do you think about that? And then what do you got for your lock of the week?
I love that pick for the same reason. I mean, Georgia Tech is they're better than Wake. Like they're not a bad football team. Are they bowl eligible yet? Did they win 6?
They're at 5. Both teams are 5-4.
Okay. But yeah, they're gonna make a bowl at some point this year. Assuming whoever they got in between Clemson and Georgia. But yeah, I love that pick. I have Pitt -3 at Syracuse. It's not at Syracuse, so like that's the kind of confusing piece out of this. They're playing it at Yankee Stadium, so there's not going to be a ton of Syracuse fans in the Carrier Dome like there normally is, and that making that a loud environment. Syracuse is not a good football team, so I wish I had the shirt on for not a good football team. But neither is Pitt. But Pitt does have a good staff as well as some good players. So Pat Narduzzi's kind of coaching for his job right now. I think they only have 2 wins on the season. Going from representative and ACC champion not too long ago to 2 wins on the season like that's a storyline for sure. I think he's going to try to make a statement against a bad football team. And they only lost it was like 24-10 or something. What was the cover for last week? You had that it was 22.5 or something like that against Florida State, and they covered by
Yeah, it was 21. It was 21 and a
I think.
half. Matt had it. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's like they're not I feel really, really good about -3, especially being in Yankee Stadium, not at the Carrier Dome.
Yeah, it's like the poor man's pinstripe bowl right
Yes.
I literally think this is I want to go back and check all the weeks. I'm pretty sure you've picked the backyard brawl teams like in one fashion or another in
At
at
least
least one of your
times.
picks. At least eight
Eight
times.
I don't think I did last week because that was one of the times
I feel like I noticed that it wasn't there last week, so I think that was the first time it didn't happen. Outside of like maybe the first week. No, because it was backward brawl. You would have picked it.
I picked
Yeah.
Penn State
Yeah.
the first week. It was Penn State against West Virginia.
But yeah, no, I think Matt thought you were sick or something last week, so he just took Pittsburgh for you just to clean that up a little.
Make
bit.
sure it's there.
Just yeah, hey, we gotta have the backyard ball represented like every single week on this podcast. But no, I do like that. I think Pitt needs this more than Syracuse, and that's it's kind of them just like showing out a little bit. And 3 is essentially them just winning the game, so I like that. All right, my lock of the week, which is essentially means that this is going to be completely cursed, but I have LSU -13.5 versus Florida. The reason I have this as the lock, I looked up before we started recording, and Gene Daniels was cleared to practice on Wednesday. So it's a pretty clear sign that means he's going to be playing. And if he's going to be playing, I think that this is going to be a blowout. Brian Kelly's just going to want to show off after, getting beat pretty handily by Alabama, and I think Alabama's a significantly better football team, obviously than Florida, but then a lot of other teams in the country, including LSU. But I think Jaden Daniels kept that game close and was actually scoring on Alabama and looked fairly good until he got knocked out of that game. I still think Alabama wins that game, but I think him turning around and going to play Florida, and they're at home, so in Louisiana, like them coming to Death Valley, I think Florida doesn't really have much of a shot this game. Graham Mertz, I don't think is going to be able to do anything. And I think last week was Florida dropped their last 2. Georgia, obviously, but it was a little bit tougher of a game. But losing to Arkansas in overtime, I don't really think Arkansas is an incredible football team, but more importantly, they've been giving up a lot of points, like giving up 39 points to Arkansas and 43 points to Georgia. I think LSU could put up points with the rest of them, and I don't think Florida could keep pace. So this is a little bit Brian Kelly. I think this is like a little bit of a recruiting game where he's trying to show that he's still at close to the top of the SEC, even though he got dog walked a little bit by Alabama last week. So Florida LSU -13.5 at home versus Florida. I think they're just not going to take their foot off the gas.
Yeah, I like this as a bounce back spot for LSU. It should be a game where they come in with something to prove, and I like the pick.
Yeah, me too. I think Napier lost the team too. So I saw some quotes about him blaming the lack of concentration for only having 10 guys on the field for the one special teams snafu, and like a bunch of weird. I think he's out.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're going to knock him out after this year. So some booster's going to pay something because when I just go Googled Florida Napier the other day because I saw the 2 touchdown line too, and I was like,
Yeah.
and there I think he's out. I think his time is done there.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see, but I think it's more. I'm just relying on Brian Kelly just being desperate at this point, honestly, and trying to run up the score. At this point, they don't really have a shot in the SEC, so he's just shooting for anything and trying to keep LSU in the in the storylines. But all right, so those are our picks, our 5 picks. Let's go on to some of our money making picks. So our upsets and our parlay or teaser of the week. So our upsets are going to be basically a 2.5 point spread or plus 130. So we'll give you the pick and then the plus money associated with it. I will go over to you, Mike, first for your true upset of the week.
Yeah, I got Indiana at Illinois. I was surprised that this wasn't a closer game. Indiana's been playing some pretty good football since whatever the game was before the Penn State game. That with their backup quarterback coming in, Sorsby, I think is his name. He
Yeah,
provides the duel.
Rutgers, the Michigan, Rutgers, Penn State.
Okay. They since then he like his dual threat gives them a little bit of a different spark. Illinois has been very, very inconsistent this year with Luke Altmaier at quarterback. I thought this was going to be a closer line. I think 210 value over 2 times your money back is fantastic. So I was very comfortable putting this as my upset based on the value.
I love the value of this because I don't really understand. And it's a 6.5 point line, so plus 210. You might as well go for that if you think Indiana has a chance to pull this off. But I don't really Illinois. I think people like them in the Big Ten West to start the year. They've obviously not really lived up to any expectations. They have not looked good. I think that their last couple, they're 2-2 in their last 4, but they beat Maryland, which I think people are putting a little more stock in that. Maryland is just they're a really hot and cold football team, and then they beat Minnesota, who's just I don't really think Minnesota is anything to write home about. But yeah, no, I like this pick a lot. I mostly just like it for the value. So doubling your money for what should essentially be close to a pickup game. My true upset of the week, I love this pick, and I don't know how I feel that I'm going directly against Mike about it because Mike's positive on the season and he's got this as his favorite, I think. Yeah, as his favorite. But I love Texas Tech. Texas Tech plus 160 at Kansas. I think Texas Tech here is coming off of Kansas, coming off a big win against Oklahoma, and then beating Iowa State. I think Iowa State's not really a good football team and beating them by 7. But Texas Tech is bringing back Baron Morton, excuse me, at quarterback. He came back last week, but he missed like the past 3 or 4 weeks for Texas Tech. And it kind of showed. Like they lost against Kansas State, they lost against BYU. Their offense wasn't really able to do anything. And then he came back last week against TCU, and they instantly turned it around. Their offense looked way better. I think he threw 2 touchdowns. I think he's a way better quarterback. He's pretty close to what Tyler Stowe was, supposed to be. So, I've heard people kind of rumbling about that he's the better quarterback on the roster. So, I think Texas Tech is a little bit underrated here because people don't really know how to value that. And I think Kansas's backup quarterback's been playing pretty well. Was it Jason Bean? Yeah, Jason Bean's playing pretty well. But I don't really trust him the same way that I was trusting. Why am I blanking on their
Jalen
Daniels?
Yeah.
The other Daniels.
The other Daniels, yeah. But no, I think I just don't love Kansas's football team. I know they lost to Oklahoma State, who was they're starting to turn on the Jets a little bit. They lost to Texas, but I can't really hate them for doing what they're supposed to do and win football games. But I kind of like the value. I think this is a true pick'em game, and I think Baron Morton is kind of a little bit more of a difference maker for Texas Tech. So plus 160 at Kansas is my true upset of the week. Matt, what do you got for yours, and what do you think ours?
Hey man, losing to Oklahoma State in October and November is never something to be put on a bad list. That's a
Yeah.
that is a fine loss. I like both of them. I think both of them could go either way, so I don't think either of them should be as big underdogs as they are, which is obviously why you take the money line there. So I think both of those games can go either way, so I like that. I have another dueling pick. I'm going against you. You have Michigan -4.5. I think Penn State wins this game. I talked about it in the ranked game. I just think they're the better team. Obviously, football power index isn't something that you should rely on at all, but like Penn State's, even with the loss, is still the higher rated team in that. The one thing that the thing that's going to decide this game is how well Penn State can run the ball and how often they run it. Because we haven't seen anybody try to run on Michigan, because why would you? You're down by 20 half the time. So so their run defense has been good, but we don't know what that run defense is. Is it actually good, or is it good because of volume? No one runs the ball on them because they win it. They're winning every game. So if Penn State's able to run the ball on them, I think they win this game handedly. If they don't, Michigan might pull it out, but I think it's going to be a close game. I like the value of +160.
I mean, yep, good. We already talked about this a lot, but I mean, I think this is going to be a rock fight. So rock fights can normally go either way, but I do like Michigan pulling out. But 160 is pretty good value, especially at home for Penn State. I mean, I don't know. Is this going to be like a stripe out or a whiteout or anything? I feel
Yeah,
like Penn
just
State's
stripe.
guy just, yeah,
It's a
they got to
stripe
do
out.
something.
Yeah,
They're going to
it's a
be
stripe
going
out.
crazy.
Big Ten.
But
What is it? What is it? The big noon kickoff is there.
oh god, yeah,
See Pat out there.
big noon kickoff. I just wish like just for the people, Fox, like have the show, do it, and then just big 7:30 kickoff. Like please, like a night stripe out would be so much cooler. All right, but those are our upset picks, true upsets. Let's get to our last segment of money making picks, our parlays and teasers of the week. So at least a three-leg parlay or teaser, and then we'll give you the value at the end for it. I'll start with mine. I'm going back to the well of trying to get the 595 special. It's missed the last 3 weeks. Last week, literally every single leg missed. So if you did the inverse, good on you, because then you got plus 595. But so plus 595 value. I love unders this week. I already have gave my under for Stanford and Oregon State, my under 54.5. So that's the first leg. Second leg, I have Texas and TCU under 53.5. I think Texas with Malik Murphy's offense is not the same. They do have some big play, deep threat ability, but I think their defense is just able to hold TCU down. And after maybe scoring 2 touchdowns, Texas is just going to run the ball a lot. They lean on the run. They're much better running the football than TCU is. So I think once they, if they get a lead in this game, they'll just be able to kind of hold it out. And then the last one I have is probably what I think might be the closest, solely because Ohio State's going to try and show off, but Michigan State at Ohio State under 47.5. I mostly have this because I truthfully don't see Michigan State scoring double digits. If they score 10 points, I could see it, but I don't really see them getting any more than that. And I think the spread of this game is upwards of like 31 or something. So I see Ohio State kind of blowing the doors off this game and then just kind of stuffing them and just running out the clock. So my 3 for plus 595, Texas and TCU under 53.5, Stanford at Oregon State under 54.5, and then Michigan State at Ohio State under 47.5. The no fun under 595 special. Matt, what do you got for yours?
The plus 300 teaser, the 4-leg teaser hit last week. We're going back to it again this week. I have Missouri +8 versus Tennessee. I think that game's going to be close. I think Missouri pulls the game out, so I like them keeping it within a touchdown. Washington -3.5 versus Utah. This is just teased down from my 9.5. That's my favorite. I think they win this game. They think they win it by a touchdown at least. Florida State -8 versus Miami. I thought back and forth between the under here and the spread. I ended up going with the spread. I would like to get it down under 7, obviously, but I think Miami's offense doesn't have the firepower to beat Florida State where you can beat Florida State, which is deep, and they don't really have that deep passing game. They're an intermediate kind of West Coast offense. So I like Florida State to cover that. And then Penn State plus 10.5 versus Michigan. I have them as my upset. So obviously I like them to stay within 10 points. I like them to stay within 10 points either way. I think, again, it's going to be a rock fight here. So that's 4 legs, 6 point teaser plus 300.
All right, like those. And then, I mean, you hit last week, so back to the well. Mike, what do you got for your parlay teaser of the week?
I got buying some points in the Big 12. So I liked pretty much all the favorites in the Big 12 this week when looking at the spreads, including the Kansas one that we talked about before. But I got Oklahoma State money line at UCF. I just don't like that it's at UCF. I think the spread was -3, so I wasn't loving the spread for that. But I think Oklahoma State's going to definitely pull it out. Gundy does it his way in October and November. Iowa State, BYU beat Texas Tech by a couple scores last week, but BYU, not last week, 2 weeks ago, BYU got dog walked by West Virginia team that's not that great. Iowa State's playing some good football right now. I know they lost last week, but I got them -3.5 at BYU, and then Texas -5.5 at TCU. I hope they don't let me down again this week, being up by 20 and then letting somebody come back. That total will get you plus 284. So almost 3 times your money back.
Yeah, no, I like all those. I mean, BYU's kind of like back and forth for me. I don't really know how to bet them, so that one is the one that scares me a little bit. I love Oklahoma State money line. I think they have the Big 12 title in their sights, and then obviously I like Texas, -5.5 over at TCU. But any additional picks that we want to throw out? The one I wanted to throw out initially was I put it in my parlay, but I love a lot of the unders this week. Texas at TCU under 53.5. But I see a lot of unders, and then like you said, the Big 12 favorites I like this week too. But Matt, what do you got for any additional picks that you want to throw out? And then I'll move over to you, Mike, before we close out.
Miami, Florida State under. This is kind of a game where Miami can't score and Florida State doesn't. I don't feel like they're going to score because Miami's defense is good. So I like under 50.5 there. And then the record setting under of 28.5 of Iowa Rutgers. I don't see how either team scores. So I like it going under 28.5. And this is the unders in Iowa are just going to keep going lower until they hit one.
They're just gonna print money like going under in Iowa. I was waiting for someone to put this as their under for the week. I know it's like just a running joke that this is going lower and lower, but I mean this is the true sickos game. And last week when what was it? Iowa went to Northwestern. That was the original sickos game, and it absolutely lived up to the hype of being that bad. So yeah, I mean. I love the under here of under 28. I think this game is going to be hideous. I just want to see what the weather is, because I feel like if this game is rainy or anything like that whatsoever, then I literally would take this. I would push this down to like under 20.
I think it was freezing temperatures. I don't think it was raining. Oh no, it's 47. It's warm out there.
It's warm enough for them to do the wave as they're not scoring.
Yeah, they're not passing the ball. It doesn't matter.
It's warm enough that the tackles won't hurt as bad.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Yeah, the punts will go further. Like, what do you know?
There we go.
All right, Mike, what do you got for any additional picks to throw out?
I got Utah at Washington under 53. This was close to being my under pick. I think Matt made a good point before. It's going to be very similar to the Oregon Utah game, something 33-10, something like that. I think it'll get in the 40s, but I don't think it'll touch 50. So you have a couple points there. The other under I wanted to go with was Texas State versus Coastal Carolina. I think that was under 58. Over 58. Texas State scores the ball. Coastal Carolina is starting to pick up their offense and score in the 30s a couple times. I think that can get well into the 60s, maybe 70s, because of those defenses aren't good and their offenses are starting to click. We already talked about Oklahoma State, already talked about Iowa. Northwestern plus 10.5 at Wisconsin. I like the under in this game. I think one of you guys had that earlier, but I don't think Wisconsin's going to score a lot of points. I think Northwestern might squeak out a touchdown or two. But I think this has got 24 to 16 or something like that written all over it, or even 14-6. But and then USC plus 15.5 at Oregon. I think so. USC doesn't have a good defense. Fire the defensive coordinator. They're probably reeling a little bit there. They might be trying to get the new coach to get the stand-in a job. So you might see the defense a little bit fired up to start. And they're always going to put up points, even with Oregon's defense being really, really good. Over 2 touchdowns is a lot in a heated USC Oregon shot. I don't think USC's got a chance to win or anything like that. I think Oregon's defense is gonna stop USC's offense enough time, and their offense isn't going to get put on any sort of pause throughout the game after maybe some initial start. But 15.5 is a lot of points for a divisional game, not divisional conference game between these two.
Yeah, the 50.5 threw me off because I think Oregon blows this out a little bit, to be honest. I think USC, they're reeling a little bit, but I more so think that Oregon has to, just because like they're looking for style points at this point, because I mean, this is their road, they control their own destiny. So and USC reeling a little bit. I Caleb Williams could single-handedly bring them back into this game though. So I don't love 15.5 is probably a decent bet for USC if he keeps in the game. But yeah, all right. So those are our all of our picks. So we're tracking our picks like we do every single week. Our 5 official picks: over, under, favorite, underdog, and our lock of the week. And then we'll also send out our upsets and our parlay with all the plus money associated with them. So look out for the card coming out during game day before the big noon kickoff Saturday morning. But thank you for joining us for week 11. This has been the Transfer Portal CFB Gambling Podcast, and we'll see you next week for week 12.